So I'm gonna go ahead and start on the pasta with pancetta and corn. Ooh, this is gonna be good. I'm putting some fresh corn kernels into the skillet with some garlic cloves and Fresno chilies. I just sliced a Fresno chili really thin. And then I'll also add some oregano leaves and salt and pepper. I love pasta with fresh corn, and this has kind of that pancetta flavor. It's really quick to come together, and the sauce, let me tell you, is out of this world good. More on that in a bit. I need to cook the chilies and corn for just about 4 minutes, and this pasta will come together really soon after that, which is good because Paige and Lad will not be long. So I'm gonna finish up this pasta. I'm so excited to show this to you. It's so good. I'm gonna deglaze the pan with the corn and the peppers with just a little bit of white wine, just a little, not gonna go overboard. It just kind of sets the stage for this incredible sauce that the pasta has. All right, now this pan was so hot that wine really just almost reduced instantly. And the wine kind of loosened all those bits off the bottom of the pan. So now the pasta should be ready, and I just used orecchiette, the little ear-shaped pasta, and I'm gonna drain it right into the pan. And then I also like to get a little bit of the pasta water because that's gonna help me with the sauce. And that's why I love pans like this, because then you can keep the pasta water handy nearby, and it really helps with so many pasta sauces. So now I'm gonna add some Swiss chard, and it's just cut into pieces. You could also do spinach, or you could leave out the green altogether, but it really, really shrinks when you stir it around. So it looks like a lot now, but it'll really shrink as it starts to wilt. So I'd like to kind of get spoonfuls of the pasta and put it on top of the Swiss chard, and that kind of helps with the wilting process. It speeds it along a little bit. Now, I have something else to add to the pasta, and this is going to turn the sauce into something really rich and creamy and magical. So let me tell you what's in this bowl. The cream mixture has just 4 ingredients: 2 egg yolks, 3 tablespoons of heavy cream, a cup of grated Romano cheese, and 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Then I just whisked it together. All right, I'm gonna give the pasta one more stir, and I'm gonna turn the heat off before I add this mixture. Because it has eggs in it, I don't want it to be violently bubbling and boiling when I stir it together, just so the eggs will just thicken and not just scramble instantly. So you just want to stir and keep stirring that mixture. It's going to combine with that hot pasta water, and it just gets thicker and thicker and more creamy. And the timing is just perfect because that Swiss chard is still wilting, and you can start to see the sauce just coating those little ears of pasta. Oh, this is glorious. This egg mixture is so great for any pasta where you don't want it to be a real heavy, thick sauce, but you just want to add creaminess and richness. It goes with pretty much any other ingredient you want to add in. All right, and you want to just keep stirring until pretty much all the sauce is coating the pasta and you don't have a whole bunch in the pan. If you need to splash in a little more pasta water, you can, and then just taste it, make sure there's plenty of salt, and I think we are there. Now, before I added the corn to the pan, I had cooked some pancetta, just cut into bits. You can use regular bacon if you want to. Anything you want, it just adds such a great flavor to the pasta. And I sprinkled that over the top. And then just to finish, some torn basil, and I'll bet you a certain rancher and a certain daughter of his are gonna be here any second. Baked pepper mac and cheese. Now, I'm starting with the sauce for the mac and cheese, and I just heated some milk in the pan, and I'm gonna grab some softened cream cheese. So instead of making a white sauce with butter and flour, I am kind of taking this shortcut with milk and cream cheese. While the cream cheese is softening, I'll sprinkle in just a little bit of seasoned salt, which I love adding to any mac and cheese. And I sprinkled in some pepper, so I'll stir it until the cream cheese is totally melted. All right, as you can see, the white sauce, quote unquote, is ready. So now I'm gonna add the cheeses. And I'm adding 3 of them just to drive that cheesy point home. White cheddar, pepper jack, of course, and Gouda. Okay, the cheese almost instantly melted because that milk was so hot. Now I will add the pasta, and it's just campanelle or campanelli. You can use any short pasta. You know, obviously macaroni is the #1 choice. There are so many pasta shapes in the world. I could use one every day for a year and not use them all. All right, so stirred the pasta into the sauce, and the pasta is just under al dente because this is gonna bake in the oven, and you wanna give the pasta just a little bit of room to absorb some of the liquid. So now I'll add herbs. I have some torn basil, some oregano, and parsley. And just for fun and for color, a jar of drained pimentos. Stir everything together. Oh my gosh, this is looking so saucy and marvelous. All right, I have a buttered baking dish, and it's a small dish. As you can see, I'm not making a huge amount. So I'll pour it in. Now I'll push this so that it's just in an even layer. Now, you're probably wondering where the peppers come in, because this is a baked pepper pasta. So I'm gonna make a little breadcrumb topping. I have a bowl of seasoned panko crumbs, and I have some melted butter. Actually let it get a little brown, not intentionally, but I think that's going to work out to my favor. And I will stir the crumbs just to get them all coated in this kind of brown butter. I'm gonna call this unintentional brown butter panko topping. Once you have the panko crumbs all coated, then the peppers go in. I have little mini peppers, the kind that come in a bag, and poblano peppers. I just sliced everything thin, took out most of the seeds and membranes, and then jalapenos. Left a little bit of the seeds and membranes in there because that's where the spice comes from. Now, before I add the pepper panko topping, I'm gonna add more cheese to the top. So this will kind of bake on top of the mac and cheese and just have another layer of cheesiness. This is a mix of pepper jack and white cheddar. And now come the peppers. Give it one more stir to make sure those crumbs are coating the peppers. Oh, they're coating my cutting board too. All right, I'll just kind of spill them all onto the top and just kind of spread them out. So this is ready for the oven, 425 degrees, and it'll bake for 20 minutes. Before we go sit down,
Yes.
let's have a quick bite. The mac and cheese, honestly, is just calling my name. Creamy lemon pasta with steak and lobster. So I added some butter to a pretty hot skillet, and I just added some lobster meat. It's claw and knuckle meat, and it just looks amazing. It's all I can do not to just reach in here and go for it. So the point here is not to cook the lobster because actually the lobster is already cooked. I just need to heat it up and sort of get it coated in that butter. And now I'm gonna add a little more butter to the pan. I had a mixture of butter and olive oil to put the lobster in. Okay, so I'm gonna crank up the heat and I'm gonna grab the beef, which is, because it's a special occasion, beef tenderloin, which
Oh, wow!
Nice.
Stop.
that's just the kind of reaction I look for in a crew member of this cooking show. So I've got not too much because tenderloin is a very expensive cut of meat. And I'm gonna grab some lemon pepper seasoning since it's kind of a lemon vibe in the pasta. But I just wanna cook these chunks to medium rare. It's gonna take a couple minutes. The tenderloin's gonna rest, and by the time the pasta's ready, it is going to be absolutely perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna make the sauce right in the same skillet. I've got finely diced shallots and minced garlic, some red pepper flakes, woo!
Whoa.
Oops, minced oregano and thyme. Woo, it's popping. And then I'm gonna stir this around to release the magic. Okay, so I'm gonna move forward with this delicious pasta sauce. I'm gonna add quite a bit of wine. Woo, that is some brown butter sauce there. All right, so this has reduced just a little bit, and I'm adding some cream.
Oh my gosh.
And quite a bit of lemon zest. Now I'm just gonna let this thicken up and reduce for probably just a minute because this pan is so hot. And after that, we'll pull this pasta together. Okay, and then whenever I make a pasta sauce, I always reserve a little bit of the pasta water and just pour it in just to give it a little bit of thinness so it doesn't get too gloopy. So for the pasta itself, I'm using angel hair, which I think is so good with any light creamy pasta because it just kind of coats the noodles. It's already cooked, standing by, and then I'm just going to toss it.
Whoa.
Ooh, baby. Check it
You've
out.
done it again.
Okay, and then normally I'd squeeze a lemon over, but I just went ahead and juiced a lemon. I'm just gonna kind of pour a little bit of juice, but it looks better when you squeeze a lemon. And then lots of parsley all over. So there's the turf. And then look at this glorious lobster, you guys.
It looks so good, Mom.
This has Alex and Mauricio written all over it. We are making mean green fusilli. It's cooking now in the water. All right, I'm gonna make the sauce. This is so cool, you guys. You're gonna love it. It's got some different things going on. And by different, I mean delicious. So I've got butter in the pan. I didn't intend to brown it, but I left it a little long. So I've got brown butter. Woo! Added some onions and garlic. Bless you, Stu.
Thank you. Sorry.
And some finely diced jalapeno. And then this is where the rubber meets the road. Roasted poblano chilies. So I roasted the peppers under the broiler till they were black. And then I took them out, put them in plastic bags to let them sweat, and then I scraped off the skin. And look at this incredible mixture. I mean, that is some serious flavor right there. And those roasted peppers have little black bits, just incredible. Okay, so I'm gonna cook this mixture for exactly 3 minutes. All right, so I'm gonna keep moving forward and turning this into an incredible sauce. I'm gonna add some white wine. I should have added tequila now that I think about it because of the poblanos and jalapenos. I'll do that next time. And then just a little splash of vegetable broth just to help the sauce be extra saucy, and a whole bunch of cilantro. Look, I mean, this is gonna really help the green. I usually use cilantro in like cold situations like pico de gallo and salsas, but I like to cook with it too. It's just an amazing flavor. Okay, so this is even greener than it was before. So I'm gonna let this cook, and so the sauce can reduce for another 3 minutes. Amazing. This is going to be so different because it has sort of a little bit of a Tex-Mex vibe. The fusilli is just barely ready, which is a perfect time to drain it, and it goes right in. I think fusilli is my favorite pasta. I'm announcing it to the world. It's just so curly and cute.
Oh, I really feel the same way.
Cream, just a splash, not too much. Don't get mad, don't get heated. And then a whole bunch of pepper jack cheese.
This is gonna be kind of spicy.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting and creamy and dreamy. Oh man, it's so amazing. And the more you stir, the thicker the sauce is getting. Like, it's amazing, you guys. Woo, it looks great. I am spiralizing some sweet potatoes. I am gonna use these noodles to make sweet potato and mushroom carbonara. I have a skillet going, and come look at these mushrooms, Paige. I cooked the sliced mushrooms in a little bit of bacon grease. I sauteed the bacon earlier, and then I cooked the mushrooms. So now I'm gonna move forward with the carbonara sauce, and I'm adding what is this? Garlic. Adding garlic and a pinch of crushed red pepper flakes and some salt. I'm holding my sleeve, don't be concerned. And pepper. And then I'll start stirring it around until I smell that garlic. So when everything's sizzling, I've got some baby kale. And you can also use baby spinach. The baby kale kind of stays together a little bit better, in my opinion. Okay, so look at this mixture page. How good does this look?
Yummy.
Delicious. All right, so now it's time for the noodles. So I'm gonna get this whole bunch, and it looks like a lot, but it was only like 3 sweet potatoes. That's what I love about spiralizing vegetables. Whether it's zucchini or carrots or sweet potatoes, it kind of grows as you go. Okay, and then I'm gonna pour in some water, which is gonna help make the noodles a little bit tender. Now, some people boil noodles like this, sweet potato or zucchini noodles. I always find that that just makes them fall apart more easily. I like to cook them really gently in a skillet with the rest of the sauce ingredients. I just find they stay together better, and you don't want to just stir and go crazy. You want to treat it with care. So I'm going to sit here and babysit the sweet potato noodles until they start to get tender. Okay, the sweet potato noodles are tender. Look at this page. They look fantastic. I can tell they still have some structure to them. They aren't totally falling apart, and that's good. Now I'm gonna turn off the heat, and I'm going to grab the 4 eggs in a mason jar, whisk them together, and then I'm gonna add some Parmesan, make a mess in the process. I'll add some salt and pepper, and then come look at this page. So this mixture is gonna go into the really hot skillet of sweet potato noodles. You just pour slowly and toss the whole time, and the idea is that the hot water and the heat of the sweet potato noodles will create sort of this thick coating for the noodles, and it just turns into heaven, if you ask me. Okay? And when it's regular pasta, you just want to toss pretty constantly, and you don't want the eggs to scramble, and actually the Parmesan kind of helps with that. Okay, there's such a fine line between the sauce being lovely and glossy and thick, and then suddenly scrambled eggs showing up. So here we go. Oh, hold on. I didn't cut those quite short enough. And you can see little bits here and there. It doesn't mean it's scrambled eggs. It means it's the Parmesan in the egg mixture. So I'll sprinkle the top with some of the bacon. Yum, yum, and then some extra parm. Oh my gosh, this looks so good. And then of course, plenty of parsley. So I'm gonna make a pesto chicken lasagna skillet. It is absolutely stunning and so, so comforting. I've been sauteing some thinly sliced onion with garlic in a little butter and oil. And I'm gonna move on with the sauce for the lasagna skillet. And I'm gonna whip out the store-bought pesto. I'm actually gonna add about 2/3 of a cup or so. I want this to be pretty saucy and rich. So I'm also gonna add the same amount of white wine. I mean, white wine and pesto, sign me up, no matter what the dish is. So the pan's pretty hot and it's already kind of reducing a little bit. So I'm gonna add some heavy cream. Any kind of lasagna that has chicken and a cream sauce to me is just divine. Very, very comforting. And I'm gonna add some rotisserie chicken, and that's part of what makes this pesto chicken lasagna so easy. I'm also adding some canned artichoke hearts that I chopped, and this is a good time to add some salt and pepper. And then quite a bit of Parmesan, which will add amazing flavor and also kind of thicken the sauce just a little bit. A lot of times I'll add spinach to a lasagna like this, but this time I'm gonna add kale, which is really, really nice. The kale seems to hold up just a little bit better than the spinach during the cooking process, and I just chopped the kale. You can also shave it thin, or you can keep it in larger chunks and just tear big chunks of it if you want to. All right, so now it's time for the lasagna. And I am using lasagna, but I broke it into pieces before I cooked it. And this is part of what makes a lasagna skillet so easy. You just kind of break the lasagna into the boiling water, let it cook, and then you have all of these wonderful chunks of lasagna without having to fuss with all the layers. Now you want to toss it so it's all really mixed together and you don't have any big sections where it's just lasagna or just chicken. So it looks really well mixed to me. And next comes the cheese. And when I say cheese, I mean cheese. I'm adding a bunch of grated mozzarella. I really kind of like this hard mozzarella. It doesn't quite get as watery when it bakes. Okay, so this just needs to go under the broiler for 2 minutes until the cheese is melted and bubbly. Wow, golden and luscious and bubbly around the edges. So you can just dig in and serve, but of course, I love to keep going when it comes to a dish like this. And I have some ricotta cheese. And I'm just doing dollops all over. And I love doing it right when it comes out of the oven, so then it kind of starts to warm the ricotta a little bit. And then I have some pesto. And again, just dollops. You can drizzle it back and forth or just kind of put it near the ricotta. And then I just have a diced fresh tomato, which is just a nice little thing to put on top. So I'm tearing some basil, scattering that all over. It's almost too pretty to serve. Key word being almost. I am serving this. Looks too good. So you can kind of cut it with a knife if you want to, or just kind of get in here with a spoon. This is kind of how I do things. No need to be too neat and orderly. And then you can see this glorious sauce in the bottom of the skillet. Make sure you get that and just kind of spoon it around. Wow, can you believe how fast that was? Lasagna in minutes instead of like 2 hours, which is what the regular stuff takes. All right, I love regular lasagna, but I could make these lasagna skillets every day for the rest of my life, especially if pesto and cream are involved. Pizza spaghetti pie, or a spaghetti pizza pie, however you want to say it. Started with 4 eggs. I'm adding ½ a cup of Parmesan and some mozzarella, not too much, just a little handful. A little bit of marinara sauce and 3 little spices. Some granulated garlic, some oregano, and some crushed red pepper flakes. Equal parts, that's the level of spice I like. And then I'm gonna go in with a whisk, mix this together. It needs a little bit of salt and pepper. It looks like a little bit of a puzzling concoction at this point, but just you wait. All right, so I got that stirred together. You know what? I have leftover spaghetti all the time, so it makes perfect sense to have a recipe in your arsenal like this. So leftover spaghetti, I put just a little bit of oil on it, so it is really raring to go, and it needed purpose in its life, let's face it. And then I'm using the tongs to just toss it. Look at this, just sticky, ooey gooey leftover spaghetti. And that's dinner, kids. Get excited. Just kidding. So now I've got a big old heavy skillet, and it's on low heat. It's already hot. I put some olive oil in here. And so you guessed it, the spaghetti mixture is going to go in. I'm gonna cascade it beautifully out of the bowl and into the pan. There. And then I wanna push it into the sides of the pan. So the point of this stage is to start to set the bottom of the spaghetti pie. So I'm gonna give it about 2 minutes on low heat until those edges just barely start to brown. All right, 2 minutes has passed. the spaghetti pie is kind of starting to set. So look at this page. I kind of started pushing a little bit of the spaghetti up on the rim because I'm gonna build a pizza out of this. So it's a spaghetti pie, but I'm gonna turn it into a pizza spaghetti pie. So first things first, pizza sauce, AKA marinara. I'll just kind of spread it over the top just like I would pizza sauce on a pizza. Grated mozzarella all over the sauce.
Over the sauce.
Yum, I like it already. I'm tempted to just stir it up and finish cooking it and just eat it out of the skillet. And then I've got pizza toppings. So very thinly sliced red onion and very thinly sliced green bell pepper rings. And then this is a really cool convenience ingredient, crumbled sausage from the freezer. It's actually sold in bags. I mean, talk about where our world is today. You don't even have to sit at the stove and cook sausage and crumble it for your pizza. Okay, and then finally, sliced black olives. One of the best pizza ingredients known to man right here. Okay, so Paige, let's go put this in the oven. Oh, boy, that's heavy. Isn't that a cool way to use leftover spaghetti, Paige?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna bake this at 400 degrees. It's gonna take about 10 to 12 minutes. This has been cooling. It's out of the oven. Look at this spaghetti pizza pie.
Oh.
Okay, now we are gonna have some fun and try to turn this out onto the board. I already sort of ran the spatula around the edge to loosen it, but I'm gonna try to get it out in one piece because I wanna show you the beauty and glory, here goes, of a pizza pie, spaghetti pizza pie. Look at that.
Wow.
So then you just take a sharp knife and cut it into a little wedge, and then look, that's what the pizza spaghetti pie looks like. Isn't it pretty?
So pretty.
Okay, I'm gonna finish it with some basil leaves. I think this is kind of one of those conversation starters if you're having company over, or it's just an easy Tuesday night dinner for your kids, whatever you prefer. Lemon pepper tenderloin pasta. So I zested lemon, and I did it about 30 minutes ago and put it on paper towels to let it dry out a bit. So it's just this beautiful, fluffy lemon zest. And then I'm gonna add some garlic powder and onion powder, mustard powder, and then some really coarse cracked pepper, and of course, some salt. So the great thing about making your own seasonings like this is that you can really customize it. So if you like it a lot more lemony and zesty, you can kind of up that proportion. You can just kind of add until it's the perfect lemon pepper. So look at this.
Yummy.
Isn't that nice? Oh my gosh, and it smells so good. So I'm gonna use about half of this lemon pepper seasoning, and I'm gonna toss the tenderloin. So I just started with beef tenderloin and I cut it into chunks. And then I have a very hot pan over here with a lot of butter. And that is another way we always have our steaks on Drummond Ranch. Lots of butter is involved.
Amen.
Yum, yum. So I'm gonna leave it in a single layer right there just for a second and let it start to brown. And I'm gonna check the pasta. I've got bucatini that is kind of boiling away. And I'm trying to time it so I can get the pasta out of the water before it's perfectly done. And I'll show you why in just a couple of minutes. Okay, so now I'm gonna start tossing the tenderloin in this really brown butter. And the secret to tenderloin is you do not wanna overcook it. And then just stir it around. And then when you can't see any more red, give it another minute or so, and then take it out, because it'll continue to cook after you pull it out of the pan. And medium or medium well tenderloin, what's the point of living? And I'm gonna take it all out with a slotted spatula, And remember that it's gonna keep cooking. So if you see that it's still pink or red, do not let your hearts be troubled.
It's like steak bites, expensive steak
Yeah,
bites.
I mean, honestly, this is the ultimate steak bite right here. We could just put this on a platter with some horseradish sauce. Okay, so I'm gonna make the sauce for the pasta, and it's actually incredibly simple. You won't believe it. So I'm turning the heat back on, and I'm gonna get a ladle full of the pasta water and put it into this hot pan. You can also bring in some wine or some like brandy or cognac if you want to, but the pasta water is really, really a good way to go about it. And then some butter. Woo, gosh, Ree. I'm getting excited. All right, so you want to cook the pasta to just under al dente. You don't want it to be too close to being done because it's going to keep cooking in the sauce. So in goes the bucatini, which is like thick, hollow spaghetti, basically. All right. All the lemon pepper goes in, the rest of the lemon pepper. And then I'm gonna start adding Parmesan a little at a time.
A little?
Well, it's all relative. And then just lightly toss it with each addition of the parm. And the pasta water and the hot pasta and the Parmesan is just gonna come together in perfect harmony. If it starts to get a little thick, you can add another splash of pasta water here and there. And basically, you're gonna finish cooking the pasta in the sauce. Look at that. Does that look incredible or what? Okay, and now I'm gonna serve it. And this is really where the fun comes in. So I'm gonna get a big portion of the pasta. Oh my. And then get some of this beautiful lemony steak to go on top. How good does this look? Parsley on top. Lemon pepper tenderloin pasta. Highly recommend it. I'm gonna take a bite out of the pan. Butternut squash and kale pasta. I'm gonna put the pasta in to boil, and I'm using bucatini, but you can use any pasta you want, and that really is the case with every pasta dish I make. Just walk into your pantry or open your pantry door, look at the pasta possibilities. You can even put a blindfold on and just pick one. That's how versatile this recipe is. So I just added some pancetta to a skillet with olive oil and butter. And the reason this is a PDQ recipe is I'm using butternut squash that was already prepped, and I got this in the produce section of the supermarket, which is a revelation because if anyone has ever cooked with a butternut squash and prepped it from scratch, you know how long it takes. It can be a bit of a pain. So I'm adding some chopped red onion. So pancetta, butternut squash, red onion, olive oil, butter. Look how delicious this looks already. So now I've just got to let this cook for about 8 minutes. The butternut squash is starting to soften and get little brown edges, and that pancetta is getting sort of crispy. I love pancetta, which is basically
Bacon.
an Italian bacon. So it has delicious flavor. It's not quite as like strong and smoky and bacony as the bacon we know. So it's great for a pasta dish like this. Okay, moving on to the next stage of the pasta sauce. I'm gonna add some garlic and fresh thyme and sun-dried tomatoes. I love this sauce because it's not heavy, but it does have a lot of wonderful, luscious ingredients. Look at that, how yummy. So now the next little stage of ingredients, bagged kale. This has already been torn, washed, loved on, hugged, so it's ready to go. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add Parmesan cheese on top of the kale. I'm gonna save a little bit for the top, for the garnish, as we like to say in the Drummond Ranch kitchen. Okay, so Paigey, as you can see, the kale is kind of starting to wilt a little bit. But what I love about kale is it doesn't really wilt very fast. Like if you use spinach, you just have basically a couple minutes before it really wilts. So the pasta goes in. Oh, I forgot to add wine.
Yeah, I was wondering.
I'm just gonna add it now because there's no way I'm gonna let this go. Listen. Ooh. It's the sound of sin and deliciousness right there. And then I'm gonna add pasta water. Usually you would add the wine after you add the kale and Parmesan. So it's okay to add it a little bit late. Better late than never, right guys?
That's right.
Okay, so now I'm gonna turn the heat down and start stirring this together. And you still wanna cook it a little bit so that wine and pasta water kind of starts to thicken. And look, oh my word. So the last thing I'm gonna add, I think it's the last thing, you never know with me. I'm gonna squeeze in some lemon just to brighten things up. To me, there's just nothing about this dish that isn't perfect. I would make this for myself on a Monday night, a Tuesday afternoon, a Saturday morning. You didn't laugh enough. Okay, and then some black pepper. So then I've got some toasted pine nuts and I'm gonna sprinkle them over. And all I did was just put pine nuts in a dry skillet over kind of medium heat and just shook the skillet around for about 5 minutes, and it kind of makes them light and golden. And there we go. This is where I start to lose track. Parmesan cheese and torn basil. Look. Hello, hello, hello. You want to make me happy? Just make me this any day of the week. Pasta rosettes. So I've got 6 noodles. You can also use just regular lasagna noodles. The thing I like about the no-boil noodles is that they have straight edges. And I'm gonna wind up slicing the rolls so it'll really come in handy to have those edges. All right, and then I'm spreading ricotta cheese all over the surface. Feel free to come in and check out what I'm doing here, Alex.
Nice.
And then love ricotta, but I feel like it always needs just a little bit of salt and pepper. And then some apricot preserves. Bear with me here. This is not a sweet pasta dish, but I'm gonna add some prosciutto in a second, and it's nice to have that little salty sweet thing going on. All right, and then prosciutto. I've still got it on the paper because once you take it off the paper, it just becomes more and more unruly. So you basically want to put it straight on the sheet. You see that, Alex?
Wow, it's
Isn't that cute? And then about 3 basil leaves, 1, 2, 3, and a little bit of mozzarella. You just want to keep in mind that this is going to be rolled up and sliced, so if you stuff it too full, it's going to be really hard to keep it together. All right, I'm going to put one more little shred on there. Okay, and then I'll turn it so I can roll it away from me, and you just want to kind of keep tucking things in so it stays really tight. You don't want to have a great big gap or a great big air bubble in there. Okay, so once it's rolled, I've got a really sharp knife and I'm going to cut it into thirds. So I'll cut one end off really carefully. Be sure to use a serrated knife because it just makes it easier. And then I'm going to turn it around and cut the other 2 pieces. All right, so that is 1 lasagna sheet, 3 rosettes. I'm gonna keep going until I get all of these in, and I'll put them in the baking dish as I go. All right, see this beautiful little pan of rosettes?
Wow.
And I love that not all of them are identical and some of them are different heights. It's just nice and rustic. So I'm gonna top this with a simple sauce, and it's just heavy cream with some grated garlic and pecorino romano cheese, nice and sharp, and salt and pepper, and then I'll give this a stir. All right, so come on in here, Alex. You gotta watch this happen. Poor Cam. And honestly, this was a relatively simple dish. It just takes a little assembly time, but the payoff in terms of how much time it takes to prepare is great. I have some mozzarella left, of course. Always got to leave some mozzarella to sprinkle over the top. All right, now we can put this into the oven. I'm gonna bake it at 375 degrees for 14 to 16 minutes until it's bubbly. So I've got a little bit of balsamic glaze over the top. You can do whole basil leaves, you can tear them up as you go. I have a new motto. We don't get to make anything that we don't eat and taste. We don't get to make anything and just look at it anymore. Those days are over.
We do
Okay.
not miss those days.
Watch this, Alex, come in. Ready? Look at that creamy sauce. Oh, I'm so excited. Into a bowl, I'm adding some black pepper, garlic powder, paprika, and cayenne. Just give it a stir. And I've got cubed, boneless, skinless chicken breasts in this bowl. And I'll just sprinkle some of the Cajun spice over. And then just get the chicken coated. Now over here I've got olive oil and butter on pretty high heat in a big, heavy skillet. I'm not gonna stir or disturb it at all. I just wanna get it against the surface so it'll brown as quickly as possible. Chicken's gorgeous and golden. Take the chicken out of the pan, keep it on a separate platter. That butter gives it such a great color. So I can throw the veggies in here and get them going. Add red and green bell peppers. We want the sizzle. The sizzle is good. And purple onions. Then I'll add a good amount of garlic and a bunch of nice chopped Roma tomatoes. Okay, now we can give the veggies a stir. The peppers have a nice blackness going on, and that means flavor. Okay, take the veggies out of the pan before they turn to mush. Mushy peppers ruin my day. Now, this is my favorite part. See if you can guess what it is. I'll show you. Wine. Make sure the pan's really hot. I'm sorry, I couldn't speak for a minute. I love that sound and I love that smell. Delicious. Now I'm gonna add a little broth. And then just let this bubble up and reduce until it becomes really, really thick. I'm gonna go grab my other favorite part. Cream, heavy cream, not whole milk, not half and half. We'll add about a cup to the reduced sauce in the pan. And now that it's thick, I'm gonna add in the chicken and the peppers. Okay, this is ready. We've got the chicken and the onions and the peppers, garlic, and the cream sauce. Time to put the pasta in. Look at there, guys. Hey, you guys have a sixth sense, I tell you. How are you?
Good.
How was your morning?
Can I have the big blob of chicken, please?
You want a big piece of chicken? A butternut squash pasta casserole. It is so hearty and delicious. So to keep things easy, I'm adding a bag of butternut squash from the freezer. You can totally use fresh instead. And then in addition to the squash, I'm gonna add a quart of chicken broth, low sodium, and I'm cranking the heat because I want this to cook until the butternut squash is totally tender. This is a very fall-friendly recipe, but since you can buy butternut squash in the freezer section of the grocery store year-round, you can totally make this whenever you want.
Whenever you want.
Salt and pepper.
Proud.
Okay, so the butternut squash is gonna cook for 5 minutes until it's soft. Watch the magic happen. I'm gonna turn this into a squashy liquid, which is kind of strange. It doesn't sound all that good, but trust me. And you can puree it as much or as little as you want to. You can make it a totally smooth puree, or it can be sort of a chunky puree. I like things with some texture. All right, just about done. I see some chunks of butternut in there, but I'm gonna leave them because I think it'll make the casserole more interesting. Okay, so this is so cool because I'm actually gonna pull this casserole together in the casserole pan. So I already cooked some penne, and watch this. This is basically the liquid for the casserole, but it's kind of like butternut squash mac and cheese, you know? It's gonna be delicious, trust me.
It'll be great.
Okay, and then I've got a few things to add. Some roasted red pepper, frozen peas,
Wow.
and goat cheese. It kind of combines with the butternut squash, and oh my gosh, the texture and the consistency of this casserole is amazing. Stirring it right in the casserole dish. And this pasta was actually kind of cooked to not quite al dente, so the extra liquid in the casserole will keep the casserole from becoming dry when it bakes, because the pasta is gonna keep absorbing some of that liquid. Ooh, so pretty so far. Now this is a really cool little ingredient to add. I grated cauliflower. So instead of using like a breadcrumb or something, I'm doing cauliflower, and that makes it more veggie forward, more healthy. And then on top of the cauliflower, just for a little extra flavor, some salt and pepper. I love this casserole, and I love casseroles that you can assemble right in the pan. I don't have a whole bunch of different bowls that I'm mixing in. All right, now I've got a whole bunch of mozzarella, since Paige was quick to point out that there wasn't enough cheese in this casserole. And then Parmesan, of course, on top of the mozzarella. Tons of different ingredients going on, but they're all very simple. And then parsley, and I'll save a little bit to sprinkle on at the end. I think this is gonna be amazing. What do you think?
I think so.
All right, let's get this in the oven. We're gonna bake it at 375 degrees for 40 to 45 minutes, and I am so sorry that you have to wait that long. Oh, actually, you don't have to wait that long. Look, 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 look.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. That looks incredible. Check it out, you guys.
Wow. All that cheese.
Wow, it looks so good. Chicken spinach artichoke lasagna, one of my favorite recipes to freeze. So I'm starting with a mixture of onion, garlic, and rosemary. And I'm gonna add about a teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes. And I had a little butter and oil in the skillet. So I'm gonna give this mixture a stir and let it start to release all the incredible flavor. So I'm gonna let this keep cooking, and I'm gonna make the ricotta mixture for the lasagna. So a whole bunch of ricotta, and I'll add some egg yolks and a very generous amount of jarred pesto, and then some parsley, quite a bit. And I'll add some oregano that's chopped really fine, plenty of salt and pepper. So I'm just gonna stir this around and fold it until it's totally mixed together. Okay, this ricotta mixture looks absolutely incredible. There is so much pesto in here. So back to the pot with all the onion and garlic. It is looking great. Oh my goodness. It smells divine. So I'm gonna sprinkle some flour over this mixture. This is going to be the sauce. Now I wanna cook the flour for a good minute, just so it doesn't have that raw flour flavor. In goes the milk and cream. while you stir that veggie mixture that's coated in flour. And then I'm adding heavy cream. Okay, I just need to let this cook for about 5 minutes to thicken. All right, this sauce is absolutely glorious. So I've got a bunch of rotisserie chicken and it's shredded really fine. And it goes in along with a bunch of Parmesan cheese. And then frozen spinach, I let it thaw and then I drained all the water out of it. Okay, and then last but not least, some quartered artichoke hearts. This looks like the most incredible spinach artichoke dip you could possibly make. And the chicken just sends it over the top. All righty. Ooh, this looks so good. So I'm gonna turn off the heat and I'm gonna go ahead and build the lasagna. So I'm using these disposable loaf pans. And first thing I'm gonna do is get about a 1/4 cup of the sauce and put it right into the bottom of the pan and grab a little bit of this ricotta mixture. Okay, so after you spread the ricotta mixture on the noodle, I have some grated fontina cheese and I'll just sprinkle it right over. So then I'm gonna roll up the lasagna. All right, so look at that. That is 1 lasagna roll. So I'm gonna do 5 more just like this and fill the pan. Okay, now that the lasagna noodles are built and rolled up, as you may have guessed, I will top them with this glorious chicken spinach artichoke sauce. Be generous, there's a lot of it. All right, and then finally, you've gotta top the whole thing with cheese because this is lasagna. So I'm putting sliced mozzarella on top. I just bake it straight from the freezer at 350 degrees for 40 minutes. Then for stage 2, I remove the foil, put it back in, and bake it for a further 10 minutes. Then when the cheese is melted, I take them out. Mixed seafood pasta. Words cannot describe how beautiful a dish this is. I'm not gonna need words because you're gonna see it in no time. First thing I'm gonna do is start cooking the seafood. I have a mix of regular peeled shrimp, some sliced calamari, and this is a little indulgent, this dish calls for it, some cut up pieces of lobster. I'm gonna sprinkle the seafood with salt and pepper. And I started with a pretty hot skillet and it had a little oil and butter in there. The butter was almost starting to turn a little brown, so that's gonna help the fish get some great color in a really short amount of time. I don't have to cook it all the way through at this stage. I'm gonna take it out and then it'll cook in the sauce eventually. Okay, that's about halfway cooked, so I'll go ahead and take it out of the skillet. It didn't get fully cooked and it doesn't need to. It smells so amazing. Oh my, oh my. I want to leave some of the juices in the pan and I'll let the fish sit while I move on with the sauce. I've got some really finely diced red onion and it's just going to go right in with all that yummy seafood flavor and some minced garlic. And then I have a few more things to add. A couple tablespoons of capers. Capers is one of those ingredients that I kind of forget about. I always seem to have it in my pantry, but I just don't remember to use it very often. And anytime I do, I'm always so glad I did. I have some sun-dried tomatoes that are chopped, and then some beautiful thyme and rosemary leaves. Okay, now I'll stir this around. These onions are diced so fine that it's not gonna take long at all for them to soften. So I'm gonna deglaze the pan with some white wine. Probably about half a cup or so. Wine in a skillet with garlic is just heaven. This skillet was so hot that that wine just started reducing almost immediately. So now I can add the cream. Yes, this is a creamy seafood pasta, and I am adding a very generous amount. You can add between a cup and 2 cups, just depending on how creamy you like your sauce. And I'll season this with salt and pepper. Ah, look at the color of this with those sun-dried tomatoes and capers. Just wait till you see the finished dish. I'm gonna let this cook for another 4 minutes while the sauce thickens. So this is the perfect time to add the seafood, and you'll notice all those juices are dripping off the plate. You don't want any of that flavor to go to waste. Okay, I think by the time I've got everything else stirred in, that seafood's gonna be done. So I'm gonna keep moving forward. Instead of a bed of spinach, I'm gonna put spinach in the dish itself. It takes no time for spinach to wilt. So I'll just give it a little stir in the sauce. And then, of course, to finish things off, I'm gonna grab the pasta. It is perfectly cooked by now. So it goes right on top of the spinach. Okay, now I'll turn off the heat. I'm gonna zest in a little bit of lemon. The flavor is just everywhere you turn in this dish. Lemon always brightens up a seafood dish. It's always a good idea. I have some minced parsley and I'll sprinkle it on, along with a little bit of Parmesan cheese. And it's the moment of truth. Time to toss all of this together. Get underneath there and pull the seafood up to the top and just keep tossing until you see all the elements of the dish. And I just can't emphasize enough how delicious it smells. I'll grab the lemon and I'm gonna do lemon, parsley, and Parmesan right on top. And this is definitely one of those dishes you can serve right out of the skillet. Okay, the rest of the lemon zest and more parsley and a little more Parmesan. Okay, 6-pepper pasta. I'm gonna start cooking some onions and garlic. I've got a skillet with a little oil and a little butter in. I'll stir these and start them cooking. This dish is based on a chicken tequila pasta dish that I've made for years. It's pretty much exactly the same, except I'm leaving out the chicken. Okay, the onions and garlic are starting to cook. So I'll go ahead and add in the peppers. I've got 2 colors of regular bell pepper, orange and red. They look like a sunset. And then some poblano peppers. I just sliced them lengthwise. I've also got a jalapeno. I sliced it into strips. I made sure to get rid of most of the seeds and membranes so it wouldn't be overwhelmingly spicy. And then some mini peppers. I'm gonna add some salt and pepper to the peppers, and I'll stir these around. I'm gonna cook the peppers until they get deeper in color, and then I'll move on with the next few steps. So I'll give the onions and peppers about 4 minutes, take them out, put the pan back on, turn off the heat, and add half a cup of tequila and stir it, scraping the pan. Then I'll turn the heat back on and cook it for a minute. Meanwhile, I'll put a pound of fettuccine into boiling salted water and get back to the sauce, adding 2 cups of vegetable stock, which I'll let reduce for 4 minutes. Okay, the liquid has been bubbling away and it's reduced by about half, so I'm gonna turn the heat down and I'm gonna add some cream. And by some, I mean a cup. This is a really delicious, creamy pasta. Now, I'm not sure if you were counting, but earlier I sauteed 5 of the 6 peppers. The 6th pepper is chipotle. And I'm gonna add a couple of tablespoons of the adobo sauce from a can of chipotle peppers. I'm gonna sprinkle in a little more salt and pepper, and I'm gonna cook this until it's thickened about 3 minutes. Everything is ready. Look at this sauce. It's just silky and thick, scrumptious. Okay, the first thing I'm gonna do is get the pasta and put it in the pan. It should be perfectly cooked by now. Any pasta works. Fettuccine is really perfect because the peppers are all long and skinny, and this plate of pretty peppers, that's a nice little tongue twister. Just goes right on top. And I'll use tongs to toss all of this around. I mean, this is my idea of a good time right here. So I have olive oil in a 10-inch skillet, and I'm adding garlic and chopped Kalamata olives, some capers, and this is a very weird ingredient, a tablespoon of, who wants to guess what this is?
Tomato paste.
Anchovy paste. If you can't find anchovy paste, though, you can just buy a tin of anchovies and chop up 4. That's basically what I just added. Cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes cut in half, and then crushed red pepper flakes for the win. Yes, Mauricio is so excited. Pasta puttanesca is truly one of my favorite Italian pasta dishes. It's just so flavorful, so easy. It's basically like a pantry meal. So I'm gonna cook this mixture for just a couple of minutes. So for the liquid, I'm gonna add about 1/2 cup of white wine. It only takes a splash. And then about 1.5 cups of low sodium broth, nothing fancy. Okay, so now to the liquid, you add the tortellini. So this is just regular cheese tortellini, and I'm adding it right into the pan with the broth and the wine. I'll break it up a little bit. Now I just have to stir this and cook for exactly 5 minutes. This is going to be so good. Woo! Talk about a steam facial. Look at this, honestly, look. That sauce has basically cooked down. The pasta has absorbed it. Everything is just basically one with one another. So I'm gonna turn the heat way down, and I'm gonna grab some spinach. I love this because it just makes everything look prettier. And I'm just gonna stir it around for 1 minute until the spinach wilts. Look at that, isn't that yummy and rustic and just beautiful? Now we just need to add some shredded Parmesan, and that is a 1 skillet pasta that I am totally excited about. Here I go. Should I eat it?
Yes. I'm gonna give some to me.
I'm making shrimp scampi stuffed shells. We'll have a pan of it for dinner tonight, and then I'll put the second pan in the freezer, and we'll whip it out whenever we need it. I'm gonna let this keep cooking, and I'm gonna drain the pasta shells. I've been boiling 12 ounces of jumbo pasta shells, the kind that you wanna fill with all sorts of goodness. I need the shells to cool just a little bit before I stuff them, so this is a good time to do that. I've got 2 pounds of shrimp. I want the pieces of shrimp to be small and bite-sized. So I'll start to stir the shrimp, and then I'll add a teaspoon of crushed red pepper. Now I'm gonna add a little liquid to the pan, just a splash of white wine. You gotta have wine with shrimp scampi. It's a rule. And a squeeze of lemon juice, not too much. I'm gonna give this a little sprinkling of salt and pepper. Okay, I'm gonna turn the heat off because this shrimp is done. And I'm gonna pour this whole mixture onto a plate. All right, I'm gonna turn the heat back on, grab some butter, and I'm gonna start on the white sauce. I'll put 8 tablespoons of butter into the pan to melt, then add a 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, whisk it in, and cook it for 3 minutes. Next, I'll pour in 4 cups of whole milk and 2 cups of heavy cream, whisking constantly and cooking until it's thickened. The sauce is looking lovely and thick, so I'm gonna add more garlic to the mix. I use the first half on the shrimp, and the other half is going into the sauce. And then I'll add some minced parsley and salt and pepper. I love any creamy pasta dish. Okay, I'll stir this. Ooh, it's just glorious. Okay, I'm gonna let this simmer, keep getting more and more flavorful, and I'm gonna mix up the cheese mixture for the filling. It starts with ricotta cheese. I like to use whole milk. And then 2 8-ounce packages of cream cheese. I let it soften so it'll be easy to mix it all together. I'll add a cup of Parmesan and then a beaten egg to hold everything together. And the filling needs a little salt and pepper. and parsley in here too. I like how you just keep layering in the flavors in all the different components. I'm gonna add every last bit of the shrimp. All right, now I'm gonna stuff the shells. First thing I'll do is put a little bit of this sauce in the bottom of the baking dish. For dinner tonight, I'm using a ceramic dish. For the freezer dish, I'm gonna use a foil pan. You want them to be full enough that it almost looks like it's about to pour out. And I'm gonna top the shells with more sauce. There is sauce everywhere you turn in this dish. You wanna add enough that it's just filling the pan, it's all around the sides. And then I've gotta add some more cheese, mozzarella this time. Pan 2 is destined for the freezer. So sauce, stuffed shells, more sauce, mozzarella, and that's it. So this is for a future dinner, and this is for tonight. I'm gonna get it into a 375-degree oven for 25 minutes, and that's all there is to it. 3-sauce baked spaghetti. So I'm gonna start with sauce number 1, which is meat sauce. And I've got some olive oil in a very hot pan, and I just added onion, garlic, rosemary, green bell pepper, and finely diced jalapeno just to give it a little spice. I put in thin spaghetti, so it should be ready to go just about the time the sauces are ready. For any meat sauce I make, I do a combination of sausage and ground beef. I love the combination of ground beef and sausage. Okay, so I'm gonna mush up both meats, cook them with the veggies. It's just gonna take a few more minutes. So I'm gonna make it saucy by adding some tomato paste, about 1/4 cup, and then a whole jar of good quality marinara sauce. Whip out your favorite meat sauce, whatever it is. You can totally use your own for this recipe. Alrighty, I'm gonna add a little salt and pepper to the meat sauce. Give it one more stir, and then it just needs to simmer. So that's sauce number 1. For sauce number 2, I'm gonna make a really simple Alfredo. So I'll add a whole stick of butter to a skillet. A whole bunch of heavy cream goes in with the butter. And then salt and pepper. And then I'm gonna turn the heat up under the skillet and just give the butter and cream a chance to heat up and let the butter melt completely. Okay, the cream and butter are hot, the butter's melted. So now's the time for the Parmesan. Parmesan is the basis of Alfredo sauce, so you've gotta add a lot in order for it to be noticed. All right, those 2 sauces are ready to go. Now I'm gonna bring up a baking dish, and I'm gonna grab the spaghetti, and it should be just right. All right, so I'm gonna put the pasta straight into the baking dish, and lest you think I forgot about sauce number 3, I did not. Pesto is the 3rd sauce. This isn't something that really exists in the viral baked spaghetti recipe, but pesto is absolutely my love language. I add it to everything. And I thought it would be great to toss the spaghetti in pesto before I add the other 2 sauces. I'm gonna grab this absolutely sinful Alfredo sauce, and it gets poured all over the pasta. Finally, I'm gonna grab this big old pot of meat sauce. And yes, it gets poured right over the Alfredo sauce. I'm gonna leave a little bit of a rim of pasta. God, this is gonna be mostly meat sauce, I tell ya. I've got some mozzarella cheese, and it goes all over the meat sauce. So it's gonna go into a 425-degree oven for about 15 minutes, and then I'll let it rest for 5. So, all right, I'm gonna see if I can do this in one shot. Ready? Look at this, you guys. Oh, that creamy Alfredo, macaroni and cheese. So I actually added 2 cans of evaporated milk to a pan, And I am sprinkling in salt and some dry mustard. Love the flavor of dry mustard in mac and cheese. I try to always add it. Some hot sauce, of course.
For sure.
Ooh, it's really heating up in there. So I have 3 kinds of cheese that I'm going to add to the sauce. I'm gonna start with the good stuff. This fine, cultured cheese from the south of France. Or not. It's processed cheese from America. And then a cup of cheddar and a cup of Gruyere, which I think sort of elevates and cancels out the processed cheese, don't you think, Alex?
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm just gonna whisk. Is there any black pepper anywhere? Oh, yay, Mauricio's here with the black pepper. Yay, thank you. I can't have mac and cheese without black pepper. Okay, so this is the sauce. Look at this. I've been boiling mac and cheese. And I'm sorry, I've been boiling macaroni. Why didn't you guys stop me?
I don't know. I kind of thought about it.
Oh, I love this contraption. You know that phrase, farm to table?
Yeah.
Well, this is pan to pan. Oh, baby. All right. So I'm gonna stir this around. Oh my word. This looks tremendously delicious. I'm just gonna let the macaroni sit in the sauce and I'm gonna make a cheese topping. So I've got the rest of the Gruyere, the rest of the cheddar, and Parmesan. All right, I got that topping mixed together. This is just a really cheesy topping. You can do breadcrumbs if you want, but I really don't think this mac and cheese needs it. Oh my gosh, that looks so good. All right, so come to the oven and I'm gonna show you a little trick. I put this sheet pan in a 425-degree oven about a week ago. No, just kidding. A while ago. So it is very, very, very hot. And the first thing I'm gonna do is just spray the bottom, just for good measure. And then, are you ready?
Mm-hmm. OMG. Oh my
Look.
gosh, it's sizzling.
Sizzle.
That's the whole point. And then not only do you get that sort of crispy surface on the top when it bakes, it also like gets off to a good sizzly start
Wow.
before you even put it in the oven. So, you know what's gonna happen next. It had to happen, guys, it had to happen. Cheese everywhere. I love it, I
babe.
love it, I love it. Okay, back to the oven.
Back to the oven we go.
All right, so in it goes at 425 until the cheese is bubbly. It's gonna be heaven. Whoa. You don't have to sprinkle anything on top, but I love a little basil. I'll never argue with basil. I've been sauteing some diced onion in a big ol' skillet. I'm gonna need this big ol' skillet because this has a lot of ingredients. I'm gonna start with the 2 meats. I've got some ground beef and some Italian sausage. Now all I need to do is just crumble the meat, let it brown completely, and then I'll move on with the recipe. Okay, I got the meat all browned. Now I'll move forward with the rest of the ingredients for the meat sauce. I've got a big old can of diced tomatoes and I'm adding the juice. The lasagna is gonna need plenty of moisture when it's in the slow cooker, so I don't drain any of this. Another small can of diced tomatoes. And then I love that rich tomato flavor, so I'm gonna add a can of tomato paste. I've got the tomatoes stirred into the meat, so I've got some seasoning to add, starting with garlic, of course. You can't make lasagna without fresh garlic. Some salt and pepper. And this has a nice mix of fresh and dried spices. I'm gonna start with some dried oregano. And then I'll chop up some basil and parsley and add that in. Okie doke. The fresh herbs are all chopped up. So I'm gonna leave some aside for the cheese mixture for the lasagna. And I'll add some in here. You can't beat fresh parsley and basil. Turn the heat off, and that's the meat sauce. The second step for the slow cooker lasagna is making the cheese mixture. And this cheese mixture is mighty, mighty cheesy. It's got 3 cheeses to be exact. I've been grating up some fresh Romano cheese. Ooh, nice and sharp. I love this stuff. And I'll add about the same amount of grated Parmesan cheese. Now with my regular lasagna, I actually use cottage cheese, believe it or not. But I'm gonna use ricotta cheese, and it's whole milk ricotta. I'm gonna add most of this container. I need 3 cups. And then I have a couple of eggs, which helps kind of bring everything together in the slow cooker. And the rest of these beautiful, beautiful herbs. Then all I need to add is salt and pepper. That's the cheese mixture. Now all that's left is assembling it, and then it takes a little time to cook, but the payoff is totally worth it. I think I'm just about finished grating up the mozzarella. And that, by the way, is a 4th cheese that I'm putting into this dish. But who's counting, right? Okay, now it's about assembling it, which is super fun and really easy. I'm just gonna spray the slow cooker all over the inside with some cooking spray. I'm gonna start by putting some meat sauce in the bottom of the slow cooker. I'll add about 1/4 of the sauce. I've got 1 regular size noodle, and I'm putting it right in the center. And then I snapped a couple of smaller sizes, just broke off the ends so they would fit. So I'll put a couple that are slightly shorter, overlapping the big one. And then I've got some shorter ones, and those will go on the outside. There's no exact science to this, just kind of snap and break to fit the slow cooker you have. Now for the ricotta mixture. Okay, the mozzarella goes on next. The layers start all over again. Meat, noodles, cheese mix, mozzarella, and again. Meat, noodles, cheese mix, mozzarella, and this time, meat and a final layer of mozzarella. Turn it on low for 4 hours, and dinner's done. I'll let the lasagna sit for about 30 minutes with the heat off. And that, my friends, is officially a make-ahead marvel. I am making skillet spaghetti and meatballs. It's a delicious classic, lots of pasta, lots of meat, and it's baked in the oven. It is gonna be so good. I'm starting on the meat mixture for the meatballs, and it's just brown chuck with some minced garlic, and then 1/3 cup of Parmesan cheese, 1/3 cup of seasoned Italian breadcrumbs, and then a little bit of cream and some beaten egg. To season it, I'm just gonna add some salt and pepper, and then some finely minced oregano, and then I'll just go in with my hands. Lad and I actually don't really emphasize our birthdays very much, with the exception of last year. I turned 50 and he threw a big surprise birthday party for me. I've never had a surprise birthday thrown for me. I was a little bit shocked. I wouldn't have thought I would want a surprise party, but I wound up having the best time. Now, if I were to do that for Lad, I don't know how he would react. He does not like surprises. He doesn't like big parties thrown for himself. He's kind of a quiet cowboy. He doesn't like a lot of attention. So a birthday, just the 2 of us, is the perfect way for him to celebrate. All right, this is all smushed together, and I'm gonna pinch a pretty generous amount. I'm making pretty big meatballs. Okay, I got it all smoothed out. So that's 1 meatball, and I'm gonna make 9 more just like it. I'll put them on a sheet pan first. The next step is to get them into a skillet and brown them in 1/4 cup of olive oil. You have to turn the meatballs so they cook evenly and give them an occasional shake. It takes about 5 minutes. Don't these meatballs look amazing? They're so brown around the edges. They're not quite cooked all the way through, but they will have plenty of opportunity to do that. So I'm gonna move the meatballs to the edges of the pan and move forward with the sauce ingredients. In the center, I'll scrape in some diced onion and some more oregano and more garlic. So there's oregano and garlic in the meatballs themselves, as well as the sauce. This is Lad's idea of the perfect meal. He loves pasta, loves Italian food, loves cheese, and that is why I love Lad. We have a lot in common when it comes to the things that we like to eat. I'm a little more adventurous than he is, but what do you expect from a woman who's 2 weeks more mature than her husband? Okay, the onions, garlic, and oregano have been sauteing. They're already starting to get soft. So I'm gonna add a whole can of crushed tomatoes right in the center. And Lad and I can both handle a little spice in our life. In fact, at our advanced age, we need a little excitement here and there. Just kidding, we're young little sprites. And then I'm gonna add some water just to help make it saucy. I'm gonna crank up the heat just a little bit. So I'm just gonna let the meatballs keep cooking and simmer in the sauce until they're totally cooked through. Yep, this has Lad's name written all over it. I'm gonna turn the heat off under the meatballs and I'll grab the pasta. I'm just keeping it real classic and doing spaghetti. Now, sometimes if I'm making spaghetti and meatballs right before serving it, I'll put the noodles on a big platter and then carefully spoon the sauce over. It makes a really great presentation. But I'm just gonna mix the spaghetti and meatballs together in the skillet. Get the meatballs kind of on top. Now the sauce starts with diced onion and a little bit of garlic. I've been sauteing it in a little olive oil and a little butter just to give it great flavor. The onions are nice and soft, so I'll add 2 cans of just plain old tomato sauce. You can also use good marinara sauce, but I really like to keep it plain and simple. Okay, now I'll stir this around and get it going. Now I'll add a little salt and pepper. And then because it's just plain tomato sauce, I'll add in a little sugar just to counteract that acidity. Now the sauce just needs to simmer and cook for about 15 minutes. Okay, the sauce has been cooking away and it looks great. It still has about 10 minutes to go, so I'll go ahead and throw in the pasta. I like to use fettuccine because I love the way the tomato cream sauce coats the noodles. This way, the pasta and the sauce should be ready at the same time. Okay, the tomato sauce is all ready. Now I need to add the cream. And I'll warn you, this is a transcendent experience. I add about 3/4 of a cup to a cup. Oh gosh, that image of the cream swirling into the red sauce, there is nothing like it. So now to make it even more decadent and delicious, I'll grate up some Parmesan. The beauty of this tomato cream sauce is you can eat it just as it is, or you can add in little strips of grilled chicken, some sauteed shrimp. It's a great base for any pasta dish. Okay, I think that ought to be enough Parmesan. I'll save a little to sprinkle on top, and I'll just stir this in. The sauce is just perfect. Now the pasta should be done. I'll just drain most of the water out. Oh boy. This is where I start feeling really, really happy inside. Now I'll just use tongs to move the pasta all over the sauce. Just toss it gently. Oh my gosh, it looks perfect. Now the very, very last thing, I'm gonna chop up some basil. I'll just roll up the leaves and just give them a rough chop. And they just get sprinkled all over the top. All right, I cannot wait another second to dig into this. One of my favorite comfort foods in the entire universe. Okay, just a little bit more cheese. Utter bliss. utter contentment. No journey through my history of food would be complete without pasta ai quattro formaggi. I'm probably not saying that right. Basically, it's pasta with 4 cheeses, and it is out of this world. I absolutely love it. Now, the original didn't have mushrooms in it, but I'm just changing it up a bit. I've been slicing some white button mushrooms really, really thin. I want them to cook really quickly. Now, I've got some butter going in a pan, and I'll get the mushrooms right in. I'm just using regular white button mushrooms, but any kind of mushrooms will do. Now I'll just stir the mushrooms around in the butter and get them going. Now I want to give the pasta a little bit of a garlic flavor, so I'll just grate in 1 clove of peeled garlic. I love these little zesters, they're so handy. I'll just tap the garlic in, stir it around. I'm going to put in a little salt and pepper just to flavor the mushrooms. Now, the original dish used angel hair, and that's always what I use with this sauce. It's just perfect with all of those cheeses. So I'm gonna get it going. I've got a pot of water boiling. I love angel hair pasta because it hardly takes any time to cook, just a few minutes. I'll just let that sit and get going. Now, to the mushrooms, I wanna add a little bit of extra flavor. So I'll just splash in a little white wine. Not too much, probably just about 1/3 cup of wine. The mushrooms look great. They're nice and cooked. They've absorbed all the flavor of the garlic and the wine. So now I'll turn down the heat. And before I add the next ingredient, let me just state for the record, this is not a diet dish at all. It's very rich. And as such, I'm adding a cup of heavy cream. That is basically the base for the sauce of the pasta. Oh my gosh, cream and mushrooms. What a beautiful combination. Now, you can use half and half, but the cream is what the original had in it, and I like to stick to what I know. All right, the cream is already hot, so I'll grab the angel hair pasta. The only tricky thing about this pasta dish is that angel hair cooks in such a short amount of time, and you really want to act fast because if it gets overcooked, it just turns into a mushy mess. All right, the pasta goes into the cream, and if the cream isn't already hot, the pasta will take care of that. Now, before I even stir it, I'll add in the cheeses. The 4 cheeses are Fontina, just a beautiful creamy cheese, Parmesan, of course, the king of everything, and Romano, nice and sharp, and then goat cheese, just soft goat cheese. It gives the sauce a nice tangy flavor. And I'll just crumble it right in. It's gonna melt in no time because the pasta is so hot. You wanna make me happy? Just make this for dinner for me, any night of the week. I absolutely love it. Now, I'll just use the tongs to stir this around. The cheese is gonna melt. The cream is gonna coat each and every noodle. Now, I'm just gonna hope that all the pasta fits on the platter. Will you look at that masterpiece? Perfect. I'll get those mushrooms in there. Okay, it's absolutely perfect the way it is, but I want to make it extra pretty. So I'll grab some parsley, just to sprinkle over the top. This is also delicious with a mix of herbs. Basil is particularly delicious. Chives are great. Pretty much anything you have would be delicious. I'll just sprinkle this over. All of a sudden, I'm 18 again. All right, I had some onions and garlic browning in a pan, and I just added 1 pound each of ground beef and Italian sausage. And I'm just gonna break this up as it browns. It already smells so good. Since I was planning steak and potatoes for Tim and Missy, I didn't think it would be feasible for me to make that at both locations. So I kind of looked in the fridge and pantry to see what I had, and this baked ziti just jumped right out at me. Honestly, once I started thinking about it, I thought, I don't think Tim, Missy, Lad, and I have ever had dinner, just the 4 of us. We've always had the kids around, so it's kind of a novel concept. I hope we can find things to talk about. Okay, the meat is totally browned. I'll add a 28-ounce can of whole tomatoes, juice and all, and then a couple of regular cans of tomato sauce. You can also do jarred marinara sauce if you have that. Either one will work. And then just to give it a little spice, I know the 6 Drummond kids can handle it, some crushed red pepper flakes, and then about a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. I love this baked ziti. Anytime I have to feed a bunch of people, I whip it up. Then a little salt and pepper. Okay, now I'll just let the meat sauce simmer for about 25 to 30 minutes to make sure it's really flavorful. And while it simmers, I'll whip up the cheese mixture for the baked ziti. So the first cheese is ricotta, just a tub. The next is mozzarella. I'll grate 1.5 pounds and add about 2 cups, keeping the rest for later. And I'll also grate 1/2 cup of Parmesan and add it in with the other cheeses. Next, it's 2 eggs, 2 tablespoons of minced parsley, some salt, and pepper. And then I'll just stir it together a couple of times. Okay, the cheese mixture's all combined. Now I'll get the pasta in to cook. I'm using 1 pound of ziti pasta. You can do penne, mostaccioli, any short pasta is just fine. Just pour it in. All right, now I'll just let the pasta cook for about 10 minutes until it's done. Now the baked ziti elements are all ready, so I'll start by assembling it. Now first, I'm gonna take about 3 cups of the sauce out of the pot, and I'm taking it out just so it'll cool down a little bit. All right, stir it around. I'll show you what I'm gonna do with this here in a sec. Now the pasta is all cooked. I rinsed it under cold water because I wanted it to stop cooking, and I'm just gonna pour it into the bowl with the delicious cheese mixture, and then I'll stir this so the pasta gets coated in all that wonderful ricotta, all that mozzarella. Okay, now the sauce should be slightly cooled, so I'll pour it right in with the pasta and the cheese. Now the purpose of this is just to give the cheese-coated pasta a little bit of a coating of sauce without totally drowning it yet. Okay, this looks great. You don't want to totally mix it together. You still want to have some big chunks of cheese in there. Now I'll start the layering process. I'll add 1/2 of the pasta into this dish, and then I'll spread it all into an even layer. Now, I'll top the pasta with 1/2 of the sauce. The sauce looks so good. It's been bubbling away. It's really dark and rich looking. You could just boil up some pasta, top it with this. That'd be a great dinner too. Okay, now I'll just spread the sauce into an even layer. Now, on top of the sauce, I'll add a little more grated mozzarella. And then I'll start the whole process again. And this is going to be the perfect dinner for those 6 Drummond kids. I'm just gonna cover it with foil. Then I'll grab the salad out of the fridge and run all this down to my house. Now I've boiled a whole chicken, boiled it for about 45 minutes, not too high, just a nice simmer. And now I've been shredding the chicken, picking it off the bone. I've always said if you can boil a whole chicken, you can do most things in life. All right, I got all the chicken off the bones. Now I'll add the chicken later, but for now, I'm gonna take the bones and throw them back into the pot. I'm gonna let the bones simmer for about 20 minutes, and that's gonna make the chicken and noodles extra delicious. Well, it's a typical school day on the ranch. The kids have been outside doing a science project, and now they're doing their math drills. They're gonna be in here for lunch pretty soon, so I'm gonna keep moving forward on the chicken and noodles. The bones have been simmering. I got about as much flavor out of these as I could. Make sure I get them all out. Okay. The great thing about chicken and noodles too is you can sort of make it slowly over the course of a morning. There are a few steps to it, but none of them are difficult or complicated. You just have to have a little time. Now, depending on what's going on, I don't always cook like this on homeschool days. Sometimes we just have peanut butter sandwiches, and sometimes we have leftovers from the night before. But today, it seemed like a good day for chicken and noodles. Okay, I'm just dicing up the carrots and celery. I dice them pretty fine because my kids prefer smaller pieces of veggies. But you can make them big if you like it. You can also use root vegetables, add different vegetables that you have in your fridge. All right, dice the celery. So I've got half an onion, and I'll add that to the pot. And then the carrots and celery go in. This is a really pretty dish too. Lots of bright colors. All right, and then the chicken that I pulled off the bones all goes in. There's a lot of chicken in this dish. This is a whole chicken right here. Okay, about a teaspoon of salt, and then some black pepper. Okay, and then I'll add a half a teaspoon of ground thyme. Great flavor. And then this is something my mom always added, just about a quarter teaspoon of turmeric, also known as turmeric. I never know how to pronounce it. Turmeric is usually for flavor, but I use it in chicken and noodles just for color. It gives it a nice, deep golden color. For some reason, the color just makes the dish taste even more wonderful. All right, now this is gonna cook for another 10 minutes, and then I'll add the noodles, finish it off, and it'll be lunchtime. Now, part of what makes this dish so easy is I use frozen home-style noodles. They're actually the noodles my grandmother used to use. They are so delicious, you wouldn't even know you didn't make them yourself. All right, I'm gonna let the noodles start cooking, and I'm gonna mix up a little bit of a flour paste. I'll add about a tablespoon and a half of flour to a little bit of water, about a half a cup. Now I'll just whisk this until it's really, really smooth. And then I'll just pour it right into the pot. And this is gonna help the sauce thicken a little bit. And that is the important difference between chicken noodle soup and chicken and noodles. I'm just gonna splash in a little bit of half and half, teaspoon or so of parsley. Stir that in. All right, now I'm gonna let this cook for another 15 minutes till it's nice and thick. I'm adding 3 pounds of ground beef and 2 pounds of just regular pork breakfast sausage to a big pot. And then I'll add about 5 cloves of minced garlic. Now I'm just gonna cook the meat mixture until it's totally browned. I'm gonna add 2 28-ounce cans of diced tomatoes, and then I'll add 2 cans of tomato paste. If you have the little cans of tomato paste, you'd actually need to add 4 cans. This is one of those recipes that I could seriously make in my sleep because my mom made it so much and I have made it so much. All right, now I'll just stir in all the tomato stuff, and I'm gonna add some salt and pepper. It's a lot of meat, so it needs some seasoning. I'll add some fresh herbs later. It just needs to simmer uncovered for about 45 minutes. Okay, now I'm gonna add half of the herbs to the sauce, and then I'm gonna save the rest of the herbs for the cheese mixture. Okay, the sauce is pretty much ready, so I'll go ahead and make the cheese mixture for the lasagna. I've got 2 big containers of cottage cheese. Even if you don't like cottage cheese by itself, it's delicious in this lasagna. My husband would not touch cottage cheese by itself to save his life, but he loves this lasagna. All right, now to the cottage cheese, I'll add 4 beaten eggs, and that helps bind the lasagna all together. And then a cup of grated Parmesan. Then I'll add a little bit of salt and pepper and mix it all together. The cottage cheese mixture is a little more mild than the ricotta flavor, so you really, really taste the meat in the sauce. All right, that's all stirred together. Now I'll just throw in the rest of the herbs, the parsley and the basil. All the elements are ready, and I'm gonna start assembling it. I'll lay 4 lasagna noodles in the bottom of these disposable foil pans. All right, on top of the layer of noodles, I'm gonna spoon 1/4 of the cheese mixture right over the top. So I'll just spread that all over the noodles. Now on top of the cheese mixture, I'm gonna lay slices of mozzarella. It's just a big old spoonful, pretty much on top of each slice of cheese. All right, and spread that out. Now I'm gonna repeat the layer exactly like the first one. bake at 350 for about 45 minutes to an hour until it's hot and bubbly. I'll leave the foil on so the top won't get too burned. Now I'm cooking some bite-sized chicken pieces. These are boneless, skinless breasts, and I cut them into pretty small pieces because that'll make them cook a little bit quicker. Now the chicken, it looks like, is ready to come out. It's got some nice color on the outside. The good thing is the chicken doesn't have to be all the way cooked at this point. After I make the sauce, the chicken's gonna go back in and finish cooking, and that just makes the sauce even more delicious. Okay, got all the chicken out. Now I'll turn the heat down just a little bit, and I'll put the onions right into the pan with all that wonderful chicken flavor. I love making sauces like this where the meat goes into the pan first and then it just flavors everything you put in there after that. Okay, now I'll just stir around the onions and garlic. Now part of what makes this dish so easy and so quick, I use really good quality marinara sauce right out of the jar. I use it all the time. It's a really delicious shortcut ingredient. Now, I do want it to have a little bit more of a liquidy texture, so I've got just the thing. I'll reach into my pasta pot, borrow a little of the hot water, and just put it right into the skillet. The pasta will never know it's gone. Now, to give it a little bit of a kick, I add some crushed red pepper flakes. Now, I'll just stir that in. The last thing to do is just add the chicken back into the sauce, and it's gonna simmer, finish cooking, make the sauce even more delicious. It already looks good. Okay, now to give it a little green, I'll mince up some parsley. You can add any herbs you want to this dish. I'll add some basil after it's done, and it adds some great flavor. Anything you want is fine. This is probably in my family's top 10 favorite dishes of all time. Okay, I'll just mince up the parsley, sprinkle it right in. All right, now the sauce just has to simmer for about 7 to 8 minutes. Now, I've got one thing to add to the sauce, and it really elevates this dish from just a basic chicken marinara pasta. Fresh mozzarella. Now, I'm cutting it into cubes, not very big pieces. I'll just cut it into sticks. They're about 1/2 inch square. I'll just sprinkle it right in. All right, the pasta is done. I love these pasta pots with the built-in colander. Now I'll put it into a great big bowl. I love these huge pasta bowls. And then I'll drizzle the pasta with a little bit of olive oil. Okay, now I like to put a nice layer of Parmesan shavings on the pasta before I put the sauce on. It just adds a nice layer of deliciousness. I'm just using a vegetable peeler, big hunk of Parmesan. Okay, I think that's a good amount of Parmesan. Now give the sauce a stir. Ooh, the mozzarella is melting. It looks perfect. And I'm just gonna pour this right over the pasta. A lot faster than spooning it. Wow, and the cheese is gonna continue to soften. Okay, now I wanna add some green to the top and some flavor. So I've got some beautiful basil. I love fresh basil so much. Now I just stack up the leaves real roughly. I'm not trying to be precise here. This is a 16-minute meal after all. And I'll just roll them up and just slice them pretty thin. The basil winds up in these beautiful thin ribbons, and I'll just sprinkle it all over the pasta. How gorgeous does that look? And with that, dinner is done, and in 16 minutes flat. Now I've been grating up a bunch of cheeses, and I'll make the filling for the pasta shells. It starts with a whole bunch of ricotta cheese. I'm actually making 2 pans of shells, one to pop in the freezer and one to take home for dinner tonight. This is a lot of ricotta cheese. Now for some sharper cheese, I've got some grated Parmesan and grated Romano. I also have 2 eggs, and those go right in. I'm just gonna get some basil and parsley together. This is a really great meatless meal. I love it because you can serve the shells with a salad, and that's a great meal in itself. And then some salt and pepper. This is a lot of cheese mixture, so it really needs some seasoning. And then I'll just use my muscles to get this all combined. Now, part of what makes this so easy is that you can use jarred marinara sauce. And I'll just put a little bit in the bottom of the pan, just to have a little foundation of sauce. And now I boiled a whole bunch of jumbo pasta shells. I'll hold it open with my hand and get some of the delicious cheesy filling. And then it goes cheese side down in the sauce. I'm gonna fill up this pan, then I'll do the other one. I'll top the whole thing with more marinara sauce. Just pour it right out of the jar. And that is why jarred marinara sauce is so wonderful. You just crack open the jar and go for it. Now, cheese again. I have a whole bunch of grated mozzarella, and it melts so beautifully over the top of these shells. Now I have some leftover Romano and Parm, and it goes on. Now I'll just cover these with foil and dream about digging into this tonight. So just 25 minutes in a 350-degree oven, and it'll be nice and hot. Everyone gets a big helping of shells. I just love the way the sauce coats the pasta and a little of the cheesy filling peeps out. Yum. Now I've got 2.5 pounds of ground beef that's all brown. Now normally I would drain off all the fat after this, but there's hardly any fat to drain, so that's convenient for me. Now into the beef, I'll add 2 cans of just regular tomato sauce. Then I'll add a little salt and pepper. And then just to give it a little kick, I'll add some crushed red pepper. Not too much. Okay, now I'm gonna let the sauce simmer. Now I have a pound of just regular old egg noodles. They should be ready. So I'll just drain them into a bowl. It's a really great layered dish. Really simple, but still lots of things going on. Okay, now I'll just add some creamy stuff to the noodles. First, about 2.5 cups of just regular cottage cheese. And if you think you don't like cottage cheese, don't worry, you won't even know it's in there, I promise. And then I'll add a good cup of sour cream, some salt and pepper. And then part of what makes this so delicious, I add a good amount of green onions. The green onions just add a really nice tang, a really deep flavor. And because the noodles are hot, it sort of melts the creamy mixture. All right, the creamy mixture is totally coating the noodles. So now it's just about assembling it. I'll start with 1/4 of the noodles. I'm doubling the regular recipe, so I have to keep track of the amounts I have. Just throw about 1/4 in there. That looks good. And I'll smooth them out. And then I'll just ladle 1/4 of the sauce over the noodles. The original sour cream noodle bake recipe calls for just combining all the sauce and all the noodles together. But I really like layering it because it keeps the elements separate. And then every bite you get a little bit of cheese, a little bit of creaminess. It's really nice. And then I'll top this layer with some grated sharp cheddar cheese. And I grated this myself. I like the consistency of cheese you grate yourself rather than the pre-grated stuff. Okay, now on to the next layer. Now I'll top the final layer with more cheese. Okay, now these are all assembled. I'm just gonna let them cool and pop them in the freezer, and then they'll be ready to throw in the oven whenever we want them. I've just been cooking some onion and garlic in a little bit of butter, and the onions are getting nice and soft. So this is a good time to add the ground beef. Just a pound of ground chuck, and I'll add some salt and pepper. And then I'm gonna turn the heat up and just crumble this beef and cook it until it's totally browned. This recipe actually has a funny history. One time when the kids were all small, I said, let's go to the grocery store and you guys can pick whatever you want for me to make you for dinner. And you know what they picked? I'm not gonna name any names, They picked the box that comes with a seasoning packet and a bag of noodles. You know what I'm talking about. You add it to ground beef. So I've been trying to make a good homemade version of the box mix ever since. I think ground beef is one of the best proteins when it comes to budget-friendly cooking. If you have teenagers to cook for or a big family, you can buy packs of ground beef and it doesn't break the bank. Okay, that is totally browned. So I'm gonna add a good spoonful of tomato paste. The tomato paste just adds a little bit of richness to the sauce. So I'm just smushing it around on the skillet, mixing it in with the beef. And then remember that box product I told you about? One of the cool things about it is you put the noodles in without even cooking them first. So I'm putting egg noodles, 12 ounces, into the skillet. Now for the liquid, I'm gonna add about 2.5 cups of low sodium beef stock. And then I'll add a teaspoon of smoked paprika, a good squeeze of grainy brown mustard. Trust me, this is all gonna make sense before too long. A few dashes of Worcestershire sauce. Then I'm gonna add a little more pepper because the noodles and the beef definitely need it. I'm gonna stir it. And then I want the noodles to have enough liquid to cook. So I'm gonna add some hot water, about a cup to start. And while it's cooking, if it looks like it needs more, I can splash in a little bit more. And then stir it and make sure all those spices are worked in. So I'm going to reduce the heat to low, and I'll put the lid on. And I'll just let it simmer for 12 minutes, stirring it a couple of times along the way. Okay. It's time for the big reveal. Let's see what happened in here. Oh, it looks wonderful. Now you can totally serve it as it is now. It's pretty much finished, but I like to add just a little bit of creaminess. So I'll add some sour cream, and how much you add is totally up to you. It just depends on how creamy you want things to get. And just a splash or two of cream. It's sort of a stroganoff idea, but more budget friendly. And then I like to chop up some chives and just sprinkle them over the top. They make it a little bit prettier and they sure add some good flavor. All right, chives go on. It's nothing fancy, but boy, is it delicious. You've got to make it soon. I promise your whole house will love it. I've got some butter melting on the stove, and I'll add some flour to that to make a roux. You know, when we have birthday parties for the kids around our place, we don't have piñatas and 50 kids running around. It's pretty much a family gathering, another excuse to get the family together. And I'm just whisking it together over kind of medium-low heat. My husband, Lad, has both of our boys out on the ranch doing work. He's trying to keep our baby occupied so he doesn't find out the secret about the surprise party.
You gotta hold it up high like this so you get on their backs, okay? Okay, you wanna go put the spray truck up? All right, maybe we get something.
Okay, the roux's been bubbling for a few minutes, and now I'm gonna add the milk. Whisk it as you add it. Now this needs to cook for a good 5 minutes to bubble up. So I'm gonna add the macaroni to the boiling water. I'm making 2 pounds of macaroni noodles. Don't be alarmed, I have a really large family to feed. And then to this white sauce, I'm going to add some dry mustard. I really like the flavor of dry mustard, so I add quite a bit. I'm adding 4 teaspoons, but if you're not quite sure how you'll feel about it, add 2 and then give the white sauce a taste and see if you like it. Then you can always add more. Now, as if the white sauce isn't rich enough, I'm gonna make it just a little bit richer by adding some beaten eggs. And it just kind of takes it over the top and makes it ultra decadent. But before I add the beaten eggs to the hot white sauce, I need to temper the eggs a little bit. So while I whisk the eggs, I'll just drizzle in some of the hot white sauce. And just like you don't want to jump into a freezing cold pool, you don't want to pour beaten eggs into a really hot pan of sauce or they'll turn to scrambled eggs. Whisk the white sauce and just drizzle them in slowly. Okay, the white sauce is really thick, it's really smooth, and it's really rich with the addition of the eggs. I've got a bunch of grated sharp cheddar. I'm gonna leave off a couple of cups of cheese because we'll need to top the finished macaroni and cheese with it. You just need to stir the grated cheese into the white sauce. And please resist the temptation to stick a large tablespoon in here and start eating it out of the pot. I speak from experience here. Okay, add a little bit of seasoning, salt, a little bit of seasoned salt. This is optional, but just use whatever seasoned salt you have in your pantry. And black pepper. I like to use this, what I call black dust. And the cheese sauce is done. And in goes the macaroni. This is pretty much all I ate for the first 10 years of my life. It's the only reason I grew as a child, because I ate macaroni and cheese. Okay, just stir it, make sure all the macaroni is evenly coated. Oh my gosh, this looks so good. Can I borrow a fork? Okay, it's done. Now we just need to pour it into the pans. Oh my gosh. I mean, this is a lot of macaroni and cheese. Have you ever seen anything like this in your life? I'm almost ashamed, but only almost. I do kind of wish I'd lifted weights for the past couple of months though. This is heavy. Oh. And then sprinkle the extra cheese on top. And that is about the most delicious looking mac and cheese in the world. And I think I probably should taste it just to make sure it's okay. For my children, of course. And speaking of the children, I hope my baby hasn't found out about the surprise party yet. It's his first surprise party, so I'm hoping it all goes off without a hitch. That is good.